Sairam, Shunya Gita, the 16th assertion. We have completed 15 assertions. Today is the 16th onwards. 15th was consolidated combination of matter and energy, right? That was the 15th assertion. Now the 16th. The growth never stopped. What it says is the consolidation was a continuous process. The growth never stopped. Like transformation of one cell to multicellular organism. It started multiplying and multiplying. Its source was sound. From sound came energy, from energy came matter, and from matter came the mass. This process was unstoppable. It grew so large and so big that it filled up the space, but yet it remained a small speck in the infinite space. The Akasha Tattva we talk about. So what it says is, anything which has begun, anything that has originated from that sound, source of everything, every physical thing, that is anything which is tangible, is a sound. From sound, the energy, from energy, the matter, and consolidation of matter. Now, that's why they say in Upanishads, they define it as Nirantara. Nirantara doesn't mean that it is begun somewhere or it is going to end somewhere. Sanatana means eternal. It's not ancient. Likewise, Nirantara is continuous, present continuous tense. So the sound was the origin, from there, the creation, and then the energy, and then the matter and the mass, everything is eternal. Where is this placed? As we know, it is placed, or it is in the infinite nothingness, the Shunya. This mass started growing and growing and growing and growing. To an extent, it felt as if it is covered the entire expanse of the mass, space, or the Shunya, or the Akasha Tattva, Akasha. But yet it was a small speck in that infinite Akasha Tattva, or the Shunya Tattva. It is immeasurable. There is nothing which you can measure. Because there is nothing, nothing can never be measured. It's just there, infinite. We see those, those infinity sign. It's like even the science accepts that defeat, that there is something which is infinite. Like if you see the reflection in a mirror room filled with mirrors, like mirror house, inside of it, you will see the reflection endlessly. There is no end to that flow of, reflection. It's just infinite. Where is it going to end? No, it's never going to end. That is exactly how the Shunya is. It is just infinite. You can't measure it. So just let us accept it. We just accept Shunya as it is. Right? In that, this grew. So even organism we see about, how did it all begin? In one single cell creature. Just imagine one cell creature. That one cell creature which began is the cause of every organism in the world. That one cell creature or the existent, that life force just divided itself, became two. That two divided itself and became four. That divided itself and became 16. 16 became 32. 32 became 64. Likewise, 64. And then, as we know, so it just multiplied, and multiplied, never ending. Even to this day, the whole organism, the everything that we are talking about is consistently multiplying. There is no end to this. There is no beginning, there is no end. Because beginning is from nothingness, and eventually everything is nothing, because as we know, when whatever atom or even that single cell, when you put it under a microscope, when you dive deep into it, what you get is nothing. Shunya. Beginning is Shunya, end is Shunya. Everything is made of nothing. So that is what it goes on to say. It started multiplying and multiplying. The source was, of course, the sound. That matter became a mass, the huge mass. The process was unstoppable, is unstoppable, was and is and will never be stopped. So there is no end to anything. Nothing is going to come to an end. Everything, as explained earlier, everything is transcending from one form to another. The human consciousness, which we call it as a soul, which we call it as the Atman, whatever, that is the only thing which cannot be comprehended, which is not something which is tangible. The eternal flow. That is the only one which can understand that there is nothing. Everything has started from nothing. In everything which is tangible, there is nothing. All the things that we are made up of is Shunya. But yet, this physical and the tangible thing will always remain. It's only going to change its form. It's never ending. It's eternal, right? So the process was unstoppable. It grew so large and so big that it filled up the space, but yet it remained a small speck in the infinite space, the Akasha Tattva we talk about. Now, 17th assertion, it says, there was nothing called time. Time has been invented and implemented by the human mind to measure the spontaneous and eternal occurrences in the universe. Those occurrences are not restricted to creation and destruction. Creation, preservation, and destruction all are parts of the eternal change of form. So it is essential for us to understand the theory of occurrences. Everything is in a state of transformation, transcending, either from one phase to another or from one form to another. Thus, to measure these two things or two occurrences, something called time was brought in. But in reality, there was nothing called time. See, there are two things here. One is Kala. Kala is not Samaya. Let's divide these two very clearly. Kala is that moment of a particular instance or incident that has occurred or that is going to occur. That is Kala. Birth, we talk Kala. Death, Kala. So Kala is not Samaya. Samaya is our creation. Kala is something which has occurred. So please let us not get confused between the Kala and Samaya. And for our human comprehension, the mind that we think with, we always talk about two things, creation and destruction. Something which has been created, the same thing which is going to get destroyed. This is our belief system. But in reality, everything is transcending from one form to another. We have covered this, but however, very crisply, I would like to, speak a few words on it. Like the birth happens, we will take post birth. The food that consistently goes into the body gets digested, and that nutrients is making sure that the body is growing. So it's basically five elements: the earth, the water, the air, the fire, and the void, which we are absorbing and we are growing. The body is growing. So that is the only thing which is happening. But it is not that once the body is gone, we call it as death, demise. These five elements are gone. No, they are there. They are just changing its form. Water gets into the moisture, the earth goes back, and the fire element is diffused. The air stops. Whatever air is in the body just gets disintegrated, goes back to the atmosphere. That's it. So nothing has really caused the end. There is no creation, there is no destruction. These are two occurrences. Likewise, there are so many things that occur in our lifetime. So a measure was brought in. A measure was brought in to calculate, translate it into seconds, to minutes, to hours, to days, to weeks, to months, to years, to decades, to centuries. So likewise, those calculations were brought in. It was a creation, or it was a measure invented by the Homo sapiens. That is it. In reality, there is nothing called time. When we hear the masters or some philosophies which says that above and beyond time, that is what it means. There is nothing called time. We are fine, governed by the time. But besides the human beings, none of the living beings have anything called time. Let's look at all around, all the animals, all the plants, every living being, there is nothing called time. They don't adhere to time. Now the question will arise, how come the birds wake up early in the morning at the stroke of sunrise, and then they go for hunt, and before the sunset they go back to their places, and they go to sleep and whatever. That is Kala. Kala is the occurrence which is happening on its own. And that is exactly what is called as the biological clock. You have created an exact time, exact moment. Let's say every afternoon, the food has to be fed to a particular, a dog. That's how the experiment was conducted. So the dog used to feel hungry at that very moment. That is a biological clock. That is not samaya. That is not time. That is kala. So the difference between kala and samaya is what we are trying to understand here. Kala is different from samaya. Let's not get confused. So the time was brought in by the human mind. Is it essential? Yes, it is. It is essential for the worldly existence. Without that, there is nothing. Without that, nothing moves in this world. Everything is connected to time, the samaya. But look at the adverse effect of time. The mind gets so conditioned. We go by the biological age. So the moment it says, oh, you are going to turn 40, you're going to cross 40 or 30 or 50 or 60, these things will happen. These are bound to happen. So our mind is fixed to that biological clock. Sorry, the measure called the time. So our mind works that way, your thoughts into reality. The same thing, the Avadhutas are above and beyond time. When we say that the Avadhutas are above and beyond time, what does it mean? It only goes on to say, it's not that they don't care about time. They understand there is nothing called time. There's always called samaya. Sorry, there's always something called as kala, not samaya. So the Avadhuta Sampradaya, or these evolved masters and yogis, their attention is on an event. Their attention is not on the time. Their focus is not on the time. Their focus and attention is always on the event that occurs, when it has to occur. Nature has everything which is got when it has to occur. Even in nature, everything occurs. Theory of occurrence was defeated by the concept of time. There is good about time, there is bad about time. So there was nothing called time. That is what the assertion number 17 talks about. And beyond that, the time was invented by the human mind. Now, the 18th assertion, a measure was required for continuous occurrence. The human mind needs to comprehend what is happening, how it is manifesting, and how things are occurring in this world. There was a need for a measure. So the measure called time was invented to comprehend and bring a logical understanding of these continuous occurrences, or for the eternal change of one form to another. So we are talking about the necessity of time and what was the need for inventing something called time. For example, a child is born, he or she grows, becomes old, and leaves the body. That transformation needs to be measured. So the necessity of measure was felt and time was invented. That's what this paragraph explains. Now, between two occurrences, the measure was required. Everything is based on that measure. For example, now if you are 25 years old, the body parameters, biological parameters of the body is X. As we start progressing, after 40, okay, you are going to get your spectacles. The blood pressure level varies. The release of insulin levels varies. So a lot of things happen. So everything had to be calculated at what time, at what phase. So there was, I'm just giving one example. Likewise, everything was supposed to be measured. Measuring things between two occurrences. That was the need, and because they had to measure the gap between two occurrences, between birth and death, let's say, easy to comprehend and understand. Between birth and death, what is the quantum of time, quantum of time that a person is spending, that had to be measured. These two occurrences, birth and death, that happens over a period of time. Through that period of time, there are multiple occurrences. First birthday, second birthday, likewise goes on till, let's say, 100 birthdays. So everything needed to be measured, which is a good part of it. So that is when the necessity of time was strongly felt. So that is when time was invented. So to measure the gap between two occurrences, that measure is called time. So hence the time was invented. The 19th assertion, the measure is named time. The measure was then given a name called the time, which means samaya in Sanskrit. This measure is necessary only for the human race. All living beings do not need time. The earth revolves on its own axis. There is a sunrise and sunset, but in reality, the sun is static. It is the earth, Mother Earth, which has been continuously revolving on its own axis for millions of years. The measure of time was necessary only for the human comprehension. Now, people say in 24 hours, Earth rotates on its own axis. It the point which it is facing the sun, it comes back to that point in 24 hours. So that is what we call it as day and night. How our minds are. Let's talk about the how the conditioned mind works. Even to this day, oh, there is a sunrise and sunsets. In reality, we all know sun neither rises nor sets. Because of that rotation of Mother Earth on its own axis, that causes the sunrise and sunset. Whichever is the part of the earth which is facing sun is got a sunlight, that we call it as day. The one which does not face the sun, which is in darkness, we call it as night. That's it. So the whole system, the Prakriti, everything is revolving. I mean, earth is revolving and everything is happening on its own. But the time is for the human mind only, not for all the living beings. It's very clear. And earth is not static, it is obviously revolving on its own axis. And the sun is static, there is no sunrise, there is no sunset. Sun neither rises or sets, it's always consistent. But we have been taught this since our childhood that, sun is rising and sun is setting, which is wrong. We know it. But yet, this measure, as I was just mentioning in the previous assertion, that this measure was called as samaya in Sanskrit, and the measure time was necessary only for human comprehension, only for us, nothing else. Everything is happening on its own, right? The 20th assertion. With continuation of occurrences, energy and matter kept growing bigger and bigger. We have understood even during our previous assertions that this energy and matter is happening, the growth, it's combined, yet it is not imploded or exploded. We are at the stage of understanding. It started growing and growing and growing, expanding. How? What happened? How did it happen? It started multiplying. As I was mentioning, the single cell started dividing and consolidating, dividing yet together. It's like, for example, in our body, everything is consistently dividing. The older cell dies, the newer cells are more born, made. So it's a consistent process. But everything is together, yet they are different, they are individual. Likewise, that one mass, in the beginning, there was nothing divided. everything was consolidated, both energy and matter together. Nothing, the life force we call it, or energy we call it, or whatever we call it, everything was consolidated in one lump. The physical to energy, everything was one in one. And it started multiplying and expanding and expanding and expanding. It never stopped. It grew so vast, like previous assertions say, that it grew so vast that it felt that it covered the whole space, or the Akasha Tattva, or the Shunya. But still, it was a small speck in it, because Shunya is infinite. So it started continuous two occurrences. Occurrences here, we talk about the division of cells by the insurgence or the influence or by the participation of the energy. It divides, grows, divides, grows. Likewise, it started growing and growing. And source of it all is sound. From Sakshi to Shabdha. So the source is all sound. And the sound which emanated from the witness, the Brahman, the Sakshi. It just occurred. Even Brahman just occurred. The supreme consciousness just occurred. There is no creation. We don't believe in creation at all. Creation is something which ends. Once it has been created, it is done. That's it. But nothing transcends. A creation is always takes a form. You create something. Let's say you make a sculpture. You created it. It won't change its form. Due to the influence of weather and other things, it may break down, but consciously, nothing changes in your creation. It's just created. But is it real? No, everything is always transcending. It consistently transcends. So the theory of creation, which brings an end to the transcending phenomena, it is defeated. We feel that God created earth, God created mankind, God created all these things. No, nothing was created. It just happened. Everything occurred. What has occurred will always be transcending. It will always be changing its form, nature. That's the whole phenomena. If it is creation, creation is always static. Creation is always consistent. It doesn't change. When you add something, it's a new creation. When you remove something from the created, what you have created, it is again a creation. Let's say you put a beautiful sculpture, a person standing. After that, you give a platform below that and make the sculpture stand on it. It's a new creation. Let's say you remove the hat from the sculpture, which you have sculpted, and you say that something was removed. Yes, it is removed, but it's a new creation. So when you create something, it is consistent. What is ever transcending? The theory of creation, as per the religions, is defeated. If it is created, it remains consistent and constant. It doesn't transcend. What is consistently transcending is occurrence. Theory of occurrence is the only truth, because one or the other consistently is occurring. I'll give you a small story to this effect, a Buddhist story. A Buddhist monk, I think I have shared the story in the past, but then fine, we can always, listen to that. It's very interesting. A Buddhist monk is wandering around in a kingdom. When he is wandering, he's supposed to be highly elevated. The king says, bring him. Because king is very self-obsessed. He was a narcissist. He says he's the most good-looking king in the world. There's nobody who's more good-looking than him. most good-looking human being. So the Buddhist is summoned, this monk is summoned. So the king loves to hear good about himself, how handsome he is. So he'll ask him, who's the most handsome person you have seen in this world? You wandered everywhere. He says, it is you. So the king is very elated and he is happy. He just takes a pause. Oh, now you're not as good looking as you were a previous second or few seconds before. Now you're not as good looking as. King is shocked. He says, now you said that I am the most good looking. Now you're saying that I'm not as good looking as I was in few seconds. What's wrong with you? Are you insane? He says, yes, that's true. Because everything is transcending. King says, explain. He says, give me a bowl of perfume. So somebody gets a bowl of perfume. It is kept on a measure, a weighing measure. The monk takes a feather. He just, at the tip of the feather, he just touches the bowl of perfume, touches the perfume in it. And he swings it in the air and he tells the king to smell it. He says, yes, I can feel the fragrance of the perfume. But he says, has the measure, the weighing measure of the perfume come down? He says, no, it is the same. But it is so insignificant. So that's exactly what it is. When I saw you when I entered the kingdom, your palace, you were at the peak, epitome of your looks. Your body was at its peak. After a few seconds, in my presence, it started ending. It started, descending. It had ascended. Your health, your looks, your appearance, your everything, persona had reached its peak. Now it started descending. That's why I said that you're not as good looking as you were few seconds before. So king is perplexed and he understands. The perfume is out, a sum, insignificant. You can't even measure. That quantum of perfume has gone out from the ball, but the weight remains the same. Why? How do you know that it has gone out? Is because the feather has taken that, because it's smelling that perfume. Says, this is it. This is life. So the king asks, it's a full story. The king says, so now I am descending. I'll start losing everything. I'll die. Is that the end? So the peak and the end. He says, no. You're transcending the epitome of your looks, health, and appearance is transcending downwards, only to get into a new body and again reach that epitome. It's a wave. That's it. That's life. It is eternal. The cells are dying and the new cells are being made. If there are 10 billion cells, maybe one cell among those 10 billion cells is inadequate in the next fraction of a second. That is how. And when this whole cells dies and your body is shrinking and someday the whole body disintegrates, then there is a new beginning. Integration. Again, you will touch the epitome. This is life. So that moment, that king drops his kingdom and becomes a monk. Because the monk tells the conscience, that conscience which is witnessing this flow of events, integration and disintegration, and for further integration, this phenomenon of transcending is real, and that can be observed, that can be experienced only by the self, the conscience, the Brahman, the Aham. Then the king moves. Theory of occurrence is very well established in our Shastras. True to, if you read, Ishavasya Upanishad, we will very clearly understand that there is no creation. There is nothing called destruction. Everything is eternal and everything is consistently transcending, because everything has come from nothingness and everything is going into nothingness, and everything which is sustaining and remaining is nothing. It's all an illusion. That is what this particular paragraph is trying to explain. With continuation of occurrences, energy and matter kept growing. So this story, which we have spoken about the Buddhist monk, explains the theory of occurrence. We'll take a small break at assertion number 20. Thanks for your patient hearing, Sai Ram.